What's up, sports bettors? It's Matt with OddsJam, and in this video, I'm just going to do a preview of Game 1 of the NBA Finals between the Celtics and the Warriors. We have a couple of videos out already, one with player props. I did one where I hopped on an early line that I thought would end up beating the closing line. So far, so good there. I will talk about that later. Still do see some value in this game, but just mostly just doing a general preview of this game. So as we can see on the screen here, the Warriors are pretty decent favorites in Game 1. It's no surprise they're going to have a full 7 days off. They last played on Thursday. They closed out the series in 5 against the Mavericks, so they've had the full week of rest, whereas the Celtics had a grueling, albeit interesting, 7-game series against the Heat. Of course, Game 7 was on Sunday. Game 1 of the finals is going to be on Thursday. So the Celtics will have all of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to rest. So normally I like fading teams that are coming off of a 7-game series in Game 1 of the following series. It worked with the Celtics against the Heat. It worked with the Mavs against the Warriors. But rest versus rust isn't going to be a huge thing in this series. It's just mostly just going to be rust for both teams. Funny enough, I did see this stat on Twitter. Since the Warriors truly became the Warriors in 2015, the only team that has a winning record against them is the Boston Celtics. Now, obviously, a ton has changed over that time. The Celtics have had a bunch of different iterations, from the star-studded team with Kyrie and Gordon Hayward to the disappointing season that the Celtics had last year to now, obviously, an absolute juggernaut. But still just kind of interesting. The Celtics seem to have maybe the Warriors' number. The last time these two teams played was the game in which Steph Curry got hurt. It was back in March, I believe. It was the last game Curry played in the regular season when he hurt his foot. He sprained his foot. He missed the rest of the regular season. He returned in Game 1 of their playoff series against the Nuggets. So looking at Game 1 and looking at the series as a whole, I think it's going to be awesome. No surprise there. I'm not surprised that A, the Warriors are favorites in Game 1, and B, the Warriors are favorites in the series as a whole. I do think they're the better team. They have the higher talent. The Celtics, they might be better, from 1 to 8, 1 to 9, but the Warriors have the best player in the series in Steph Curry. They have the best scorer in the series in Steph Curry. And sometimes that really is all it comes down to. Now, the Warriors have a much, much more of an offensive explosion capacity to them than the Celtics do. Having Curry, having Clay, who has been hit or miss in these playoffs but has shown he can go off. Jordan Poole obviously has been magnificent. Kevon Looney had a random incredible game, which I think was Game 2 against the Mavericks. And then I haven't even mentioned Wiggins, who has, to his credit, turned himself into a much better player than he was in Minnesota. All those grotesque long twos has mostly been taken out of his game. He's really stepped up on the defensive end, which he didn't really do when he was in Minnesota. So the Warriors have obviously a much higher offensive potential, but they've also had some random games where they've struggled to score, mostly against the Grizzlies. Now, the Grizzlies just seemed to have the Warriors' number on the Warriors' offensive end. Obviously, the Warriors beat them in 6, so it wasn't like that series was ever in doubt. But the Warriors just struggled to score against the Grizzlies. Against the Mavericks, another good defensive team, didn't really have the same struggles. Like, if we just look at that series, if we just go to NBA.com and view the series against the Mavericks, it was, if we go to the series, I mean, they scored over 100 points in every single game. The least they scored was 109. Now, the Celtics defense is significantly better than the Mavericks defense. I'm not saying that at all. But if you compare that to the Heat in the Celtics series, which was just a dogfight to the very end, if we view this series, 2 games in which the Heat scored 80. Game 7, the Heat only scored 96. This game barely went under. So it's just kind of an interesting when you look at the two different series. Much more offensive explosion in the Mavs versus the Warriors than there was in the Heat Celtics, which was just a rock fight, which did have some random scoring outputs, but mostly just a rock fight. Looking at this series, the Warriors' defense, I think, has never been given enough credit. They've always been given obviously tons of credit offensively, but defensively, this Warriors team has always been good. Since they started their championship run, it's actually been led by their defense mostly, and that's obviously been led by Draymond Green. Now, the difference between these two teams defensively is the Celtics, from their best player to their 8th or 9th man, they don't really have a weak link on defense. The weak link technically is Derek White, who's still a good defender. Now, Jimmy Butler had his way with him, but that's because Jimmy Butler presents a different challenge to Derek White than anybody on the Warriors will. Nobody's as physically imposing and will just get Derek White under the basket the same way that Jimmy Butler did. Whereas the Warriors, Curry has turned himself into actually a pretty good defensive player. He's much better off ball than he is on ball, but he's not nearly the target that he was earlier in his career on defense. But Jordan Poole is someone that you could target on defense worse than anybody that the Celtics have on defense. So overall, I think this is going to be an incredibly interesting series. Looking at Game 1 specifically, again, I'm not seeing any value on the money line. The Warriors are at, like I said, minus 159. No other book has better, more favorable odds than the minus 159 that the OddsJam line has it at. If you did want to take the Warriors money line, it would make sense doing so on DraftKings, Caesars, or PointsBet, which has it at minus 160. For the Celtics side of it, same thing. No value there. If you did want to take the Celtics, it would make sense to take them at plus 140. FanDuel, DraftKings, on most of the books, Caesars and BetMGM. What's more interesting to me is the spread. And this spread, I will say, I was able to look this up prior to recording. 80% of both the volume of bets and the money received has been on the Warriors. So my guess is that right now the Warriors are priced at minus 3.5. I think by the time Game 1 starts, this will end up being about 4. My guess is that it's going to end at 4. So as I was hopping on to, I actually think the Celtics cover in Game 1. I think that they've played more recently. The Warriors, as good as they are, I think that this game's going to be close, and I think the Celtics cover. I was prepared to take the Celtics spread, but I'm going to wait. I think that you can get a better line closer to game time. So while I do think the Celtics cover, I'm going to wait to take that bet. So I'm not going to officially take any spread bet on this video. What I did take on my first video, the early line that I saw, that I hopped on, that I absolutely loved, was the total. So I got the total at 210.5. I got it at minus 110 odds. That has obviously beaten the closing line. The total's shifted up to about 211. It's sitting right now exactly at 211. And I think that's probably where it's going to stay. If I had to guess, I do think this goes over. I would probably take the over 108, the over 211 at minus 108 on WinBet if I did have, if I hadn't already taken the over at 210. I'm just going to let that ride. I still think that's a really good bet. If for whatever reason the total does lower back to 210, which I don't see happening, I would hop on that as quickly as possible. But I still think my official prediction is that this game is going to go over even the 211. So if you can get this at minus 108 on WinBet, I do think that would be a really good bet. Looking at some of the alternate lines, I love looking at team total. So right now the Celtics is at about 104.5 and the Warriors is at 107.5. Now, unfortunately, there's no value here. The OddsJam line has the best odds for both of these numbers at 107.5 for the Warriors and at 104.5 for the Celtics. So I don't have anything on the team total. For player props and even more alternate markets, I generally rely on the OddsJam positive expected value page for that because there's so many different options and you can get some awesome value on the OddsJam positive EV page. I generally just stick to that for my player props. Now, there are two here, both over rebound totals, one for Tatum, one for Draymond Green, that I do like just for basketball reasons. But if you open them up in a new tab, which I like to do just to compare the lines, actually I need to open one. So we're looking at Draymond Green and Jason Tatum. I didn't see any value when I looked prior. So the OddsJam line has it at minus 116. The three books have it at plus 110. FanDuel has it close to that at plus 108. And then the other books, WinBet, BetRivers, PointsBet, have it roughly at even money. So there's not a ton of value here. I still do think Draymond, I like him to collect some rebounds in this game. But the Celtics, they don't necessarily play with a traditional center, but they do have a bigger lineup with Robert Williams, Grant Williams, and Al Horford. So I think that Kevon Looney is again going to be getting some run in this game. So I worry about Draymond collecting 8 rebounds. If you look at his previous games, he hasn't really trended over this number. So I'm going to sit that one out. The next one was Jason Tatum, which I did like a little bit more. The odds jam line had it at -125, points bet at -120, and then the odds we'd be betting it at DraftKings, Caesars, and BetMGM at +100. Then of course BetRivers has it at -108. It is within market width at 32 cents. So for player prop, anything below 40, it's going to be a play. So based on my calculator, this would be about a $45 bet for me. And I actually do like this one. So the Tatum one, I am going to take. I'm going to go ahead and lock this one in on Caesars. Tatum, he is always hit or miss collecting rebounds, but I think in his first finals game, I just have a lot of faith in Tatum collecting some rebounds. Especially, he's going to need to be huge. So I think he will be. I think he'll show up. So I'm actually going to take him to go over 7.5 rebounds. It's a smaller bet, obviously, only a 2-unit bet for me at $45. But as of right now, I do love the Tatum to go over 7.5 rebounds. So let me add this to my bet tracker, and that will be my official bet that I've locked in. Now, to give out official predictions, like I said, I have the Celtics covering. I'm going to wait to lock that in closer to game time because I would bet my life that the odds will eventually shift to Celtics +4 as opposed to +3.5. And I want to get that extra half point. And then I also think it goes over, which I've actually already bet on a previous video. So I didn't double do it. And that's all I got for you. So if you're tailing these bets, if you agree with the predictions that I have, let me know. Let me know what your thoughts were in general. You can hit me up at my Twitter handle that you see on the screen here. You can also comment on the video. Let me know that way. Other than that, would appreciate if you could like the video and then, of course, subscribe to the IGM YouTube channel. But that's all I got for you. So thanks for watching and have a good one.